Hey there, and welcome back to Temporary Locals.
I'm Jared.
And I'm Megan, and this week our guest is taking us to England. But before we get into that, if you're new here, Jared and I are an adventure loving couple sharing real stories and experiences from the places that we've actually been. And sometimes we host fellow travelers who've been to places that are still on our bucket list. So whether you're planning your next adventure or you're just here for the storytelling, we are so glad that you're here. And we hope that you stick around and subscribe and join us. We put out new episodes weekly.
That's right.
Today, our guest is Riana. She's a travel blogger who writes about her worldwide adventures from her home base in Vancouver, Canada. Her blog, Teaspoon of Adventure, she shares her firsthand tips and thoughtful itineraries for mid-budget travelers. And on Substack, she's taking readers behind the scenes of family travel. And we are so excited to welcome her on today. And without further ado,
Yeah,
let's get into the episode.
Rihanna. And in England it can be very rainy, so I hope that she took her umbrella, Ella.
Ah.
Ah,
Hi, Rihanna. Welcome onto the podcast. We are so happy to have you here to talk about England today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, do you want to give just a little bit of intro about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Rihanna. I'm a travel blogger at Teaspoon of Adventure, and I'm based in Vancouver, Canada. And I guess sort of my intro to England. Well, going way back, I first visited London in 2012. It was my very first time in Europe, first solo trip, and I totally fell in love with it. And I've been back probably a dozen or so times over the years. And then most recently, I was there with my family, so my husband, baby daughter, and our dog, and we were actually in England for, I think it ended up being 4 months. So we did 2 months in London and 2 months in Brighton, which is a city just on the south coast. So very familiar with English living.
Yeah. So, what was your first kind of like intro to going to England? What made you want to go there? Was it a school thing or, just deciding to get out and travel or?
Yeah. So the very first trip, 2012, that was just a flight deal. I got a flight deal in my inbox that was, I was living in Toronto at the time with my family, and it was Toronto to London. And I said, okay, guess I'm going to London. That's where the cheap flight is. And then just totally fell in love with the accents, the history, I was 19, so I thought the monarchy and all of that was quite cool. I'm a big theater person, so seeing like the West End shows and all the museums and the galleries and everything like that, it was just such, um, it was like a whole world, fit into one. Not a little city, but one city. You really just had like, the diversity of all the cuisines and yeah, just the history, especially like, coming from like North America, like we are, it's wild to have places that are hundreds, thousands of years old. Like, everything I'd pass, I'd go, oh, that's older than my country. That's older than my country. So that really blew my mind and definitely convinced me to keep coming back over the years.
Very cool. Okay, so over the years, you've had quite some experiences there. And then this most recent one where you kind of took a parental leave and went there, right? What made you decide, like during your parental leave, let's pick up our baby and travel?
Yeah, so I had first read about somebody doing this probably 5 or 6 years ago. I had stumbled upon an article of a family that did kind of a shorter trip. They did like some backpacking when they were on their parental leave. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I kind of kept that as like a little, an idea in my mind and was discussing it with my husband. And just as we kept talking, because he gets a paid parental leave from, we have a pretty nice parental leave here in Canada. So he gets to take paid time off. And we thought, like, okay, there's never going to be another time in our lives where he's going to be paid to not go to work. So let's take advantage of this. And just through some narrowing down of where in the world we wanted to go that would be easy for us to get to, comfortable, a place we had been before and we were familiar with. England kind of came up as we spent some time in France as well. And then England, was just right there. So that was an easy-ish kind of a few trains and hop over with the dog and the baby. And I think because I had fallen in love with London all those years ago, and I brought my husband back a couple times too, it was always really this dream of mine to be able to live in London and in England. So being able to do that, like with a baby and a dog and a husband, was just kind of like a very bucket list fulfilling moment to have that experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so walk us through, did you go to England or France first?
Yeah, so we did France first. So we flew
Okay.
into Paris, and then we were based in the Loire Valley, which is just like we were based in a town or city called Orléans, which is like 90 minutes south of Paris. So we were based there for the first 6 weeks, and then we did a bit of a road trip up to the northern coast of France, and then we took the Euro Tunnel, which is a train that goes like across the English Channel, but it's not the one that people most know is the one from Paris to London. It's not that one. It's off on the northern coast, and it's one of the only ways you can get into the UK with a dog. They're quite strict about how to get dogs in, so that was a whole another adventure because we brought our dog with us. And then yeah, from there we took the train over to London, and we were there for a month, and then we took the train down to Brighton, and we were there for 2 months, and then came back up and did our final month in London before flying home to Vancouver.
Awesome. So we do want to talk to you about France, but I think we wanted to save that one for another time. So we'll jump into that at a later date. But walk us through kind of like getting settled in and kind of what your first things that you wanted to do when you got there.
Yeah, so we were in London first. So the neighborhood we lived in London is called Brixton, and it's South London, still quite central. It's I always look at everything based on like the London Tube map, so it's in Zone 2. So if you think of Zone 1 in the center, and then Zone 2 is the ring around it, and then it kind of goes out from there till I want to say like Zone 6 or something like that. So Brixton is in Zone 2, so quite central, right on an underground line, lots of bus connections, so really easy for us to kind of get everywhere we needed to go. And we did stay in Airbnbs the whole time we were, this whole trip. It was just, I know a lot of people will say, oh, it's, you can go on Facebook groups or find, something local and it's cheaper. And I'm sure we could have found a cheaper way to do it. But just with Airbnb, we kind of liked the assurances. You can read the reviews and make sure they're, happy for you to have a dog and a baby. And they're going to have, some of them provided like high chairs or cribs or things like that for us. So that was quite handy. So we had a one-bedroom apartment in this Brixton neighborhood of London, and really, really love this neighborhood. It's not it's probably not where a lot of people stay when they come to London, like to visit. It's definitely more of like a local neighborhood, but I think that's why we loved it so much. It was so busy just with like restaurants and grocery stores, and they have this thing called Brixton Village, which is kind of like a covered outdoor market, and they've got food from like all over the world. There's a really deep history of like Afro-Caribbean migrants who came over to England in the I think like 60s and 70s, kind of settled in this area. So like really just incredible Caribbean food and like Caribbean grocery stores and things like that. So that was really cool for us to be able to, like I said, one of the things I love most about London is that you can kind of have the whole world in this one city. So it was awesome to be, out eating like, oh, we're going to have like, Nepalese food tonight and Jamaican food tomorrow and then burgers and then fish and chips, still getting some of those English classics. But we really loved that area of Brixton and being able to settle in there, and going to like the parks and the playgrounds with our daughter and the library and things like that. It was a really cool like home base for us in London.
Very cool. Very cool. So what would a typical day look like?
Yeah, so it was cool because we were in England for so long. We really had like a good opportunity to kind of slow down our sightseeing. So a typical day for us, get up, feed the baby. We'd usually have quite like a slow breakfast. My husband would make like eggs and toast and sausages and fruit. And like we'd kind of, the kind of breakfast usually saved for like a Sunday morning because we were traveling slowly and didn't really have work. We kind of did that every day, which was really nice. And then usually after breakfast, we would just play at home. Sometimes because I was still working on my travel blog, I would go do that, like go to a coffee shop or something like that. And then our daughter would have her nap. And then usually after nap, that's when we would go out and kind of do our sightseeing. So we'd usually have lunch out. And then we have a couple hours to go to like a museum or a gallery. And I've got a long list of, of museums if you need any suggestions. And then we'd come back for her afternoon nap. And then usually we'd stay home for the rest of the day, like make dinner at our Airbnb kitchen. And then she's, in bed kind of 6:37. And then after that, my husband and I are just hanging out, watching movies, playing games on our phones, on our laptops, planning, our next few weeks of travel and that kind of thing. So it's definitely a more kind of relaxed pace. And I think it kind of fits into that temporary local like ethos where we kind of had like it kind of felt like we lived there, like we had a home, we had a kitchen, we were, doing these routines, but we were also out, trying restaurants and cafes and going to museums and galleries and shows and stuff like that. So it was a little like best of both worlds.
Yeah, I love that. That was one thing, when you reached out to us and mentioned you really had that temporary locals feeling, I was like, "Yes, you get it." You know, kinda going out there and immersing yourself and, you were living there, you were grocery shopping there, so that is so cool.
Yeah, it seems to be like the small things like that that really make you feel like a local. It's not like the big sights and all the like attractions and things. It's like like you and I have talked about this, going and just getting like a taxi in another country, or going to
Yeah,
the supermarket and going shopping and things like that. Like that's really what makes you feel like you're really immersed in that culture.
Totally,
yeah,
totally. Yeah, definitely. That was like just I think there were certain days when I would say like, "Oh, we're in London, we should be doing stuff, we should be going out and seeing all these things." And then I just kind of have to remind myself that like, "Okay, we went to the grocery store, we went to the playground, we did laundry, like very, basic things but you kind of have to do, especially when you're traveling somewhere for such a long time, but also that those are cool experiences. Like this is yes, it's an English grocery store because we're in England, so it's not super foreign or anything, but they still have different stuff than we have back home. And it was cool to be there for so long to like, oh yeah, this is like our favorite grocery store. Oh, they have those snacks in, or, that's the
Right.
cafe on the corner and they know us. They can like, they wave at our daughter and they know what we like to order and that kind of thing. Really cool experience. Yeah, is really about those small moments.
Yeah. Did you have any moments that were really like a culture shock to you? I think you would probably experience, I mean, we talk about that. You experience that kind of stuff a lot in like really different places than where you're from, Asia or
Hmm.
South America. You have a lot of these like culture shock experiences, but in England, I mean, was there anything that was really like a culture shock to you?
Um, Good question. I think because we were coming from France, England felt quite familiar. Like it was nice to be like, oh, I can like, understand what people are saying and I can read all the street signs. So there was a sense of kind of familiarity to it. I guess what was a culture shock? I guess just maybe actually how welcoming Europe in general, but England to like babies and dogs. Like, here in Vancouver, if we're out walking our dog, like she can only kind of go like on the, public sidewalks and grass. And sometimes there's signs up saying like no dogs. Whereas in England, like I could go into cafes and I could go into shops and they're like, oh yeah, of course, like come through with your dog. Like, yeah, you want to like browse for clothing? Like, of course, bring your dog in. Like you can, walk through the shop with them. And same with babies, like pubs, where again, here in Canada, like you can't bring a baby into a pub. But in England, like that's a really like family friendly space. And a lot of pubs would have like high chairs and change tables. And they really
Mhm.
were like, sometimes I would call and say, like, oh, is it okay if we bring a baby? And they're like, of course, yeah, yeah, we'll have a high chair set up for you. Like, no worries. So I think that was kind of a very positive, I guess, culture shock of just how welcoming England was to the whole family.
Right, right. Yeah, and that was another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on is like obviously in England and in the UK they speak predominantly English. I mean, that's where the language was invented, right? So, but a lot of the accents and dialects over there, I mean, even for an English speaking, American, it's hard to understand. Did you have trouble understanding anybody?
Not so much. I always find that like London is almost like a bit of a diluted accent in terms of like I think if we were going to like, really like northern Scotland or something like that, like I know that's
Right,
quite a harsh accent and that one's harder for me to
right.
understand at least. I do find that most of the London quote unquote accent is a little easier to understand. And I think just because it's such a multicultural place, you often have people like there's not well, at least the people we interacted with, it's not a ton of people who are, oh, I'm many generations born and bred in London, and this is our, this is the accent that my great great grandparents have had. It's like, oh no, I came from Italy and Jamaica and Ghana, and like, yeah, we've all sort of mushed together, and I speak English, and it's got an accent, and I also speak three other languages, or even people just from other parts of the UK. So I think that was actually quite cool that we did hear, especially living in Brixton, like we did hear a lot of other languages and saw a lot of writing that wasn't English as well, well, which was quite cool. And then when we came back to London the second time, we were in a different neighborhood called Spitalfields, which is on the east side. And that one is just off of Brick Lane, which is kind of known for like curry houses, so a lot of like Indian food. So again, it was like really diverse, really multicultural, incredible food. And again, really seeing like different languages and different accents and different traditions. I think it was, I believe it was Ramadan when we were there. So a lot of people were like fasting through the day, and then they'd break the fast at sundown, and you could see like big families, coming together and celebrating and going out for dinner and stuff like that. So being able to witness those traditions and those different cultures was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, I've had the experience in Dublin where I'm trying to communicate with people, and we both speak English, we speak the same language, but their dialect is so different, and just, like, the words they use are so different to
Yeah.
describe different things, and, I mean, you see that in, like, Latin American countries, right? Like, Spanish is such a widely spoken thing, but depending on where you are in Latin America, um the language kind of varies, right? I mean, um, the Spanish they speak in Spain is different than the Spanish they speak in like Mexico, and it's kind of the same thing where
Yeah.
you can take somebody from Alabama in the United States and somebody from, Great Britain, and they both speak English, but it's such a different language,
Yeah,
despite
for
being the
sure.
same
Actually,
language.
that is reminding me of one little snafu we had. So we call pants like the things you wear on your legs, pants. But
Mhm.
in the UK, pants often refers to underwear, and they would say trousers for pants. So I remember saying something, or maybe I posted it somewhere, and I said something. Oh, and then we packed 2 pairs of pants, and people are like, "What? You've packed 2 pairs of pants? You're traveling for months? What are you talking about? 2 pairs of pants? Like gross! How often are you doing laundry?" And I had to read it back, and I went, "Oh no, we have lots of underwear." We just 2 pairs of pants, jeans and leggings or whatever it was.
Oh
So
my
that was
Right,
a
gosh.
little one where the English was, yeah, like we're speaking the same language, but our words mean different things.
right. Or they call the trunk of the car the boot, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
things
taking
like
the
that.
lift, put the garbage in
Yeah,
the bin. Yeah, lots of little.
yeah,
It was kind of fun to. Our daughter wasn't speaking at the time. She's just not even 1.5. But I kind of had this vision of her like picking up all this cute like UK slang and different terms and stuff like that. It would be kind of fun.
right.
Yeah, that would be fun. And also, yeah, that's part of the fun of like, getting that local experience too, is having those funny little moments.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some of the sightseeing that you did while you were
Yeah.
there. You said you went to quite a few museums.
Definitely. Yeah, so I kind of I went through all of my photos yesterday to kind of remind myself of where we had been. So there was some kind of just general sightseeing we did, and I can kind of chat through that, and then definitely some more like museums and galleries and things like that. So and cut me off if this gets long or boring. But in
No.
London specifically, so definitely Buckingham Palace, that's kind of one of those ones you've got to see. It's only
Mhm.
open for a few weeks in the summer, so we didn't get to go in, but we did look at it from the outside, take our photos. It's right on, there's a couple parks right nearby, so really nice for just kind of walking around. They do the changing of the guard ceremony. I think it's every day at 11. We didn't stay to see that. I have seen it in the past. It just gets really busy, and I thought, with our 1-year-old in a stroller, that wasn't going to be the most fun for her, so we didn't go for that. And then also kind of nearby there, you can walk to it. We've got Big Ben, obviously the big clock, the
Mhm.
Houses of Parliament, Westminster Abbey. So again, those were all things we just looked at from the outside. I've been in them in the past. I actually went to a choral service at Westminster Abbey, which is kind of like a hack if you don't want to pay to do the tour. If you go for a service, and you don't have to be religious, you're allowed, you're welcome. And if you're not religious, I would recommend the choral services because it's just lovely music and you don't have to listen to a sermon or anything like that. So that's kind of a cool way to check out Westminster Abbey. And then I had previously gone on a tour of the Houses of Parliament. They used to let people come in to watch debates. And I believe that was
Mhm.
free. I don't know if they offer that anymore. And then I know at select times you can also do tours of Big Ben as well, like go up to see the clock. But it's cool just to see it from the outside too, because they're kind of, very iconic. Like if you've watched Peter Pan or James Bond or anything like that, you kind of recognize these different icons. Some other places that are kind of must-sees in London, Covent Garden is kind of a big covered market with lots of shops and restaurants. Trafalgar Square, they've got a big Nelson's Column in the middle and some other museums and such around there. Walking along the Thames, the river is really beautiful. You've got to see Tower Bridge, of course. A lot of people mistakenly call it London Bridge just because I think that's how we know it in North America. But that's actually a different bridge. The iconic one that you would think of as London Bridge is actually called Tower Bridge. Kind of confusing, but beautiful to get views of that as you walk along the Thames. You can walk across it as well. And then what else? So we actually did a river tour. So we did like a cruise down the Thames, which was really cool. We did that with it's called the Tower of London River Tour Company. And I really like that they had a person narrating as opposed to just like the audio guide where you kind of stick it in your ears. And I thought that was really cool because she could like answer questions and it was a little bit more interactive. And we went on that. It wasn't very busy the day we went, so we kind of just let our daughter loose and she just like crawled around the whole boat and had a great time. People seem to enjoy watching a 1-year-old crawl around while they were on the boat. And then the other thing, we were there. So we were in London around Christmas time, and that's kind of like a pretty magical thing to be in London for Christmas. So they've got tons of Christmas markets, lots of shows like pantomimes are kind of like a UK tradition to see those. Christmas lights everywhere. All the shops are all decorated for Christmas. So that was really cool. For us to see. And then there's also lots of viewpoints in London that are free. So I've been in the past to Sky Garden is kind of one of the more popular ones. And then on this trip, we went to the Lookout and Horizon 22. Just big buildings that let you kind of go up to the 50th or so floor. You usually have to book a spot online, but it's free, and then you can just kind of take in the view. Sometimes they have cafes and things like that, so you can kind of make more of an experience out of it. So those are kind of like the big, I guess in London, kind of big sightseeing points. And then if I haven't rambled too long, I can share some of like our favorite galleries and museums and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some of the favorite museums in London that we went to, the Churchill War Rooms. So this was where Winston Churchill and his cabinet actually like strategized World War II. It's the actual like rooms that they used. It's been converted into a museum because basically when the war was over, they just kind of shut the doors and like left everything exactly as it was. So if you're into history, this is super cool. It is on the more expensive side. I want to say it's probably close to like 50 American dollars to do. But as you'll hear from the rest of my list, almost every other museum in London is free. So that's kind of how we justified it. Okay, we'll pay for this one pricey one, and then we'll get, 5 or 6 free ones after that. So that's a cool one. The V&A is a, ginormous art museum that's free to visit. Very cool. You probably won't get to see everything at once just because it's such a giant museum. They also have a kids version of that called the Young V&A. It's over on the other side of the city. But if you do have kids, highly recommend that. It's kind of for all ages. They've got different rooms depending on how old your kids are. They even have a room for under 2s, which is really helpful for us. And it's free. So it's almost like having like a play center that's also, interactive and educational that you can you can't drop your kids off, you have to stay, but it's free for the family to visit, which is really cool.
Very fun.
What else? We went to the Tate Britain and the Tate Modern. Both of those are art museums, both free to visit as well. And then some like lesser known ones. We went to a museum called the Hunterian Museum, which was named after a surgeon from the 18th century, John Hunter. And he had collected like thousands of specimens, some human, some animal, of just like, parts of bodies, I guess. And he had preserved them in however you do that in the 18th century. And then the government like bought his collection after he passed away to turn it into a museum. And it's a little bit creepy. Like if you get squeamish around, anatomical things, it's probably not for you, but it's also like really fascinating. Like it'll be like, oh, here's like a duck embryo at, whatever part of gestation. And you're like, whoa, I would never think of what that looks like. So that was kind of a cool museum that we went to. What else? The London Transport Museum. If you're into seeing old school buses and trains and tube cars, that's a cool one. That's a paid one as well. But I would say worth the fee. A couple other galleries. We went to the Saatchi Gallery. That was kind of a little lesser known. They do some rotating modern art exhibits. The Wallace Collection is sort of a gorgeous old London townhouse that displays some art as well. The Museum of the Home. This one was really cool. It's literally showing you what homes look like. So they have recreated rooms from going from I think 1630 was the first one all the way up to they have a future room that's supposed to be set in like 2049. So you get to walk through all of these rooms and kind of see how they were set up for the different time periods. And then the future ones, obviously just them guessing about what what houses of the future will look like. So that's a really cool one, and that one's free as well. Natural History Museum, you know, if you're into dinosaurs, that's a must see. We did a really cool, they had like a kids activity session, I guess there called Adventure Babies. So we did that with our daughter and she loved it. So yeah, London that's just like a small smattering of all the museums and galleries and stuff that you can see in London. You could probably spend a full year going to all of the different museums and galleries that they have there, and it'd be well worth your time. It'd be a good year.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize, I mean, it makes sense, but I didn't realize there was, um, so many museums and art exhibits in London. The transportation one that you mentioned sounds
Mhm.
really cool.
Yeah, that one's awesome. We actually went there at Christmas, so they had it all decorated. Like some of the buses had like Santa hats and gifts and stuff on them, and then they did have Santa there for us to meet. So that'll be like the story for our daughter. Her first time meeting Santa was at the London Transport Museum.
That is so cool.
It is funny that you mentioned Peter Pan because we literally just watched Hook last night.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
nice.
were gonna, yeah, we were gonna watch it with the kids, and they didn't seem interested. So her and I,
Yeah.
we literally sat there and watched Hook.
Yeah, they had never, I don't know why we brought it up, but they had never seen it, and we were like, "What?" And they were like, "We've seen the cartoon version." And I was like, "No, we have to see the one with Robin Williams."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that one.
That's so
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, I don't know if you caught that when you mentioned Peter Pan. We both like looked at each other. Oh, yeah.
Funny.
we were preparing for this episode.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool. Well, it seems like you guys had, it was slow travel, but you got to see a lot, see and do a lot.
Yeah. When you list them all together, it is pretty impressive. I guess having 2 months in London to kind of explore as much as we could. It was a good amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the transportation system in Europe, I think, is
Mm.
really well like renowned for being, you know, they have a really intricate like train system over there, and you can visit multiple countries. And I know that like they're way ahead of us over here as far as like their kind of rail system and everything. So it's kind of cool to hear you talk about how you can take a train from country to country and all around, the UK and everything. That's something that we don't really have here as
Yeah,
much
Canada's
anyway.
the same. We have a very limited rail network, especially like a commuter rail network. It's almost like not many people travel Canada by train because it's just very slow and very expensive. But yeah, that's such a game changer in Europe to be able to pop around to different countries by train and um not really have to worry about like, getting to the airport hours in advance and going through customs and all these things, and just being able to have the nice scenery, and it's spacious and comfortable. And yeah, the trains are really awesome. And then in London itself, like having the tube and the buses and all that is so handy. I think we took a taxi one time just because we had all our luggage and we wanted to be able to get kind of door to door. But every day besides that, it was always on the tube or on the bus, so very easy to get around.
And are those free?
No, so that would be in London. I don't know exactly how much it costs, but yeah, to take it just like it's like the city buses or the city subway. They call it the tube or the underground. So you can just tap on, like if you have a contactless like on your credit card or on your phone, you can just tap on. If you don't, you can buy. They have like an Oyster card, which is like a Metro card kind of thing that you can buy and put money on. But it's not. I can't remember. I can't recall exactly what it costs. It's not unreasonable, and they do have daily and weekly limits. So if you were, going to a bunch of places, or if you're only there for a couple days or for a week, you don't really have to worry about like, oh no, if I, am I using the tube too much? Like once you hit the limit, every ride after that is free. So you can just kind of keep tapping on and tapping off, and you don't really have to think about it, I guess, until you get your credit card bill. Then you then you have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, that is cool. So that's cool to have the limit. Because again, we don't really have public transportation that we use, so I'm not even sure how that works.
Yeah,
I've
it's
used
quite
some
easy.
public transportation.
Yeah, it seems a little intimidating, but
Yeah, it can be a little sketchy depending on where you are. We were looking at
fair.
doing the Tren Maya in Mexico. They opened
Oh, yeah, yeah.
a train, just it's only been a couple of years it's actually been operating, but, we're planning to go to the Yucatan, and we were looking at doing it. I don't
Cool.
know if it's worth it for what we wanna do, but, it is really cool. You can kinda circumnavigate the entire Yucatan with this train, so
That's
something to
cool.
Yeah.
look into.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Looking
Yeah,
up YouTube vlogs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was just
yeah,
gonna say, like, some creators I follow on YouTube posted something about a train in Mexico, and I'm sure it's that one, so that's very cool.
yeah.
Well, tell us about some of the experiences that you got to have just because you were with your daughter.
Yeah. So I think kind of on the day to day, I think just like having a baby in England, but I'm sure everywhere, it really opens a lot of doors. I think people are so much more social. Everyone was, she's quite a social baby, so everyone was always smiling at her, playing peekaboo, waving, very friendly, offering to, help us get through doorways or lift the stroller, whatever we would need. So that was really nice. Just kind of, I think, especially if you're in a big city like London, it can kind of feel cold sometimes. So having that like social interaction with people who are perfect strangers was really nice. And then we did get to do quite a few kind of baby specific or really baby friendly things that I would never have done on past trips. So in London there's a theater called Unicorn Theater that is like a kids theater. So they had a couple shows that were specifically for like under twos or under fives. So we went to a couple shows there, and that was really fun. She's obviously never, been to a theater or a show or anything like that. So it was so cool to like her eyes got so big. She was so excited, like, and she's like, clapping and smiling. Really, really loved it. And then they're quite interactive. So she got to, go up on the stage and play with the props and the actors and stuff like that, which was very cool. Um, and then when we were in Brighton, Brighton is quite known for they've got like a really good like live theater comedy scene. So obviously, having a little one, we weren't out, hitting up the comedy clubs every night or anything like that. But one of the comedy clubs did a BYOB comedy show. But instead of beer, it's baby. So bring your own baby. So the whole audience was just parents and babies, and you get to watch a comedy show, and it was really cool. It was interesting because the premise being that like, hey, we know you're all here with a baby, so we're totally fine. The kids can crawl all over the place, they can cry, they can eat, they can drink, whatever they need to do, and the comedians just kind of have to like roll with it. So you could tell like it was interesting for I think some of the parents were a little bit stressed, like, oh, I'm trying to pay attention, but also mind my kid, and some of the comedians were getting a little bit distracted. But the fact that we all went into it kind of knowing like, hey, this is the premise was, like, you didn't have to worry about shushing your baby or running out of the room if they got upset. It's like, hey, we're all parents, we all get it. And if you happen to catch a few of the jokes like in between your kid melting down, then great, like you've had a good time kind of thing. So that was quite cool. And then we also actually enrolled our daughter in swim lessons when we were in Brighton, which isn't like a Brighton specific thing, but just because we were there for 2 whole months, and we kind of thought it'd be good to get her into like an infant swim class. We thought it'd be something that she enjoyed, so that was something we got to do with her, which was really cool because I think there were 6 or 8 sessions, and we got to see like the same families every week, and kind of form connections with them. So that was a very cool way to kind of help us feel a little bit more local. Obviously, not something you can do if you're only going to be in a place for a couple days or a week, but even in smaller ways, like we'd go to the library and we'd join in on their, they'd have like an event on Wednesdays or something like that with all these toys and other kids, and being able to take part in stuff like that with our daughter was really cool.
That is so cool.
Mhm.
And talk about bragging rights for your daughter to be like, I learned to swim in England.
Yeah, I keep thinking like, she learned to crawl in France. She took her first steps in England. We actually flew down to Spain for her first birthday, so she's gonna have like this very cool list of firsts. And I almost feel like we're talking about her second birthday. I'm like, how are we gonna top it? Like we've got to like, we've set the bar pretty high.
That's awesome.
What were the, like, was there any sort of visa requirements or anything to stay kinda I guess you would consider it long term in England?
Yeah, so for Canadians, we get 6 months that we can stay in the UK before you need a visa. Obviously, you're not allowed to like you can't get a job there, you can't go to school or anything like that. You would need a visa for those things. But just
Right.
like as tourists, we get 6 months. So because we were there for 4, we were okay. We didn't need anything special.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's the
awesome.
same for Americans, I would assume. Usually it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
So I would,
Yeah,
yeah,
because I mean,
double check.
certain countries, you need a visa on arrival, you know?
Yeah, so the only thing when we crossed over from France, they did just double check that we were going to leave. So they did ask to see, or I don't even know if they asked for the proof, but they just said like, oh, okay, where are you going? Great, and when are you leaving? Like, what's the date? Do you have kind of your onward travel booked? So that's something I always recommend to people. Like the agents can always ask that question, so it's always good to have onward travel plans and like proof of those plans, even if it's just okay, I'm taking the train, on this day or whatever. Being able to pull that up on your phone is always really helpful.
Yeah, I've heard a travel hack where because like you said, some countries will require you to have a return ticket home,
Hmm.
and I've heard people say if you wanna kinda get around that, a loophole is to book a ticket, take a screenshot of it, but immediately
Mm.
cancel the ticket.
Cancel it. Yeah. Yeah, that is an option. That is definitely an option. And then I do always remind people, just like, when I'm chatting travel with people, that it's less that they care about you going home and it's more that they care about you leaving their country. So I know a lot of
Right,
times, like if people are flying to, Thailand or something like that, they're like, oh, I'm going to be here for months. Like, I don't know when I'm going home. I'm like, they don't care that you go back to, Canada, US, Australia. They just want you out of Thailand. So like book
right,
the little bus that goes over to Cambodia. Like spend $12 on it, have
yep.
that in your inbox, and if you use it, great. If you don't, who cares? You spent $12, or you get a refund, whatever it is. So it's
Yeah, there's
a little
people
help.
that live long term in Thailand that have to do those runs every, what
Yeah,
is it, 90 days, and they it's a business model, and people actually have services where they'll take you across the border to, like,
yeah,
Cambodia and
yeah.
get it stamped, and then you can
Stamped.
come back and re-enter the country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hilarious.
Yeah. I wanna go back to the BYOB. That is such an interesting, and funny concept to
Yeah.
me, I think, 'cause, um, I've seen videos online, and I'm sure you probably have too, of people talking about, like, babies on planes and, just that stress that parents have bringing their child out into public, 'cause, if
Hmm.
they have a meltdown, then everybody's staring, and
Yeah.
you can feel like, everybody's like, "Hey, quiet that baby down." So
Yeah.
to have, everybody in that same space is, I think, a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It was super cool. It was really, and I wish we had, you could tell there were people there who, like, I think it was like a monthly thing, and it was like, okay, we come to this every month. Like we've got, this group of parents, and all our kids are kind of friends, or whatever friends you can be when you're 1 years old. But there was definitely a sense of like community, of like really like this was, people coming out to this thing. And there were a couple other BYOB. We only went to the comedy show, but when in researching it, I found that there were some like city tours. I think in London they do some like city walks and stuff like that are all BYOBs. Like you show up with your stroller and your baby. There was some like musicals, and especially around Christmas, they did a lot of like Christmas shows that were like, hey, this is like, for babies, baby friendly. Like it's okay, they can cry, they can laugh. And then there's also actually a wine tasting I saw that was a BYOB, which I was a little bit like, huh, but I guess if it works, maybe one parent drinks and one watches the baby, or I'm not sure.
That is so fun. Yeah. Did everybody seem to know that the B was for babies?
Yes, people did know that the B was for babies, but I think because again, England is like I said, like you can bring babies to pubs. They did have like a bar there, so lots of people were like going off and getting drinks and coming back with their baby. And I think they're just more comfortable with people kind of, your limits, you know what you're doing, and whatever you're you're still able to take care of your baby if you've had a beer or something like that. So yeah, there was a bar and people were using it. So I guess it was both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so funny.
Yeah, I think the pub culture over there would be kind of a culture shock because I think
Mm,
here in the States, at least, to an extent, I feel like people don't go out drinking as much as maybe they did. I don't know if it's the economy or what,
mm,
but I feel like over there, there's just like a really big emphasis on like pub culture and like, drinking.
yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's interesting because it really is like that pub, the idea of having like a neighborhood pub or a place that you go after work. You really feel that. I felt that in London particularly. I'd walk down a street in the morning, and then the pub's obviously empty, nobody's there, and then coming back at like kind of 3, 4, 5, even sometimes into the night, like 9, 10, 11 p.m. Especially if it was good weather, there's just like 30, 40, 50 people standing outside of the pub with their beers, chatting with each other. And it's an interesting thing because I always kind of think, when you think about like a drinking culture in North America, it's usually a little bit more of that sort of like binge drinking, kind of that like, we're going hard, we're going to party hard kind of thing. And in the UK, I'm sure they have that as well. But there really does seem to be this culture of like, yeah, of course, we're going to go to the pub and have a couple drinks. But like that, we're having 2 or 3 beers over a couple hours and we're hanging out with our friends. And it's a thing we do every Friday, every Thursday after work. But yeah, there's definitely a big emphasis, especially if the weather is nice. I think because that's quite rare in London to have the nice weather, but being able to like stand outside the pub with your drinks, with your friends at the high top table is definitely a big culture of that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about I wanna kinda circle back for a moment.
Mm,
When you were talking about some of the sightseeing and things, you mentioned the changing of the guard.
mm,
Um, what is that for anybody listening that might not know, like,
yeah.
what is that? What does it symbolize, or what's the history behind that?
Yeah, so I probably won't be able to give you a very good history lesson, but basically the guards who stand outside of Buckingham Palace, and they're also outside of kind of any royal home, so St James Palace, Tower of London. There are these English guards, and you'll probably recognize them. They are dressed in red, and they've got like the tall
The hat.
black furry hats,
Yep.
and so they kind of do a bit of a ceremony where literally changing of the guard. So just like it's Bill's shift is over at 10 a.m. So he's got to go and Bob's coming in. But they make it quite ceremonial. There's horses and there's like, fancy steps and salutes and things like that. I know certain days it's kind of a bigger production. They do a bit more of a parade. And other days it's just kind of the saluting and the walking back and forth. But I think because it's been a tradition for I'm sure hundreds of years. It's kind of a cool thing to watch, especially if you come from a place where like we don't have a monarchy and guards standing outside of palaces. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to watch it happen, and even just to go up and to see the guards, standing in their little guard houses is quite cool. If you are into that, the Tower of London. Is a really cool site to visit. It's very historic. It used to be a dungeon. It's where I think Anne Boleyn was beheaded. And it's where they keep the crown jewels. So all of the fancy tiaras and necklaces and things like that. So you can see all of that on display at the Tower of London. And when you go there, part of your ticket, you get a tour by the fun name for them is Beefeaters. I think their traditional name is like a yeoman warden or something like that. But
Right.
everyone calls them Beefeaters, and they're kind of another version of these guards who kind of, they're not the ones that stand in front of the palace, but they still have that same, steeped in traditions. You can kind of ask them questions, and they lead you around this very historic place in London. So that's one I definitely recommend people visit the Tower of London.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of formality and, like, I don't know, everything is kinda, like, very punctual over there.
Yes.
Um,
Definitely.
they seem a lot more put together, at least, like,
Mm.
government-wise, but I think Buckingham Palace is the largest single-family home in the world,
Oh my gosh. That's
right?
funny. Yeah, that's so yeah, I actually haven't, all the times I've been to London, I've never actually toured it. It's only open for a couple weeks every summer. And I've just never been to London at that time. So that's definitely on my bucket list to one day actually get in there and be able to see the inside of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Man, such cool stuff. Um, I know you mentioned going to some like local markets, and things like that. Do you want to walk us through kind of some of your favorites or
Yeah.
some of the
Yeah, I'd
big
love to.
ones?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Eating became a very big part of our itinerary. I think especially with the baby, just because our sightseeing time was so limited, and we'd often like center it around going out for lunch or something like that. That became a really big part, a big part of our days, sort of deciding where we'd get to go. So I think in London specifically, we found that food halls, so kind of like a food court. Um, yeah, I guess a food court. They just call them food halls because it, I guess, sounds fancier. Those kind of became some of our favorite places because you get like all the different cuisines in one building. And then my husband and I didn't have to agree on what we'd want to eat.
Yep.
And because it's usually like, sort of quick serve stuff. It was ready really quickly, and a lot of them would have high chairs and stuff like that too. So it was great to bring the baby. So a few of those we really loved. Seven Dials Market. It's just near Covent Garden. Really cool vibe. They play like music. There's a little like QR code on your table that you can scan to get like drink service. That was really fun. Mercado Mayfair is actually it's a food hall that's in a church, so it's been converted into a food hall. So you've got this like gorgeous stained glass behind you, high ceilings, but you're ordering like burgers and ramen and stuff like that. So that's a cool place to go. Borough Market is a really famous one. It gets very, very, very busy. It's kind of I think everyone who comes to London probably goes to Borough Market at some point. It is cool. The food is incredible, but it does get busy. So I think if you can go for like breakfast, that's probably your best bet. Lunch, dinner is going to be really crowded. Some other ones. Oh, in when we were living in Spitalfields, there's the old Spitalfields Market, which is kind of the famous market there. Lots of food stalls. They also have like clothing and like artisans and stuff set up. But there's another market just on Brick Lane called Up Market, and that one was a little bit more, I thought, tastier. And they just had really like tons of mostly Asian vendors, just food from really all over Asia, kind of quick, ready to eat, grab and go, or you could sit at one of the tables that they had there. Um, and then if I can talk about more food that I loved,
Yeah.
there's a chain of restaurants in the UK, mostly in London, but they've popped up around the rest of the UK called Dishoom. And it's kind of known as like Bombay comfort food is what they call it. So Indian food, but like almost it's kind of that interesting thing where it's kind of trendy and elevated, but it is still like kind of like street food that you would kind of find in India. I imagine. I haven't been, but it is beloved. Like I never met anyone who's been to Dishoom who has not enjoyed it. And when we had our parents all came out to visit us at different times when we were in England, and we brought each one of them to Dishoom, and they immediately converted into super fans. I really love their breakfast. They have a naan roll, so it's like a piece of like the naan bread, but you can get it with like eggs and bacon and sausage and this like sweet spicy ketchup. So good. That's one of my, and they have bottomless chai. So if you order a cup of chai, it just keeps coming. So Dishoom's always one of my favorites. There's a department store in London called Fortnum and Mason. Very famous, kind of fancy. Probably not where I would go to do like my regular grocery shopping. But they have really beautiful teas and biscuits. So if you're looking for like gifts to bring home, that's actually where we went on one of our last days in London. We went to Fortnum and Mason and spent an obscene amount of money bringing back like fancy teas and biscuits for all of our loved ones. But that's a fun spot. And then I guess in just terms of like English foods that kind of you want to have, like a Sunday roast is kind of a very typical English thing. Almost every pub is going to serve that, and it'll look like some kind of a meat. A lot of them actually, especially in Brighton, a lot of them actually offer vegetarian options as well. And then it'll come with like the big Yorkshire pudding and the potatoes and the like 8 different types of veg. So that's a big thing on Sundays. A lot of pubs will only serve Sunday roast. So if you're there on Sunday, like that's the whole menu. You have to get a Sunday roast. Afternoon tea, obviously a very British thing. So we did that quite a few times in Brighton, actually. We went for afternoon tea. Every time one of our parents visited, it was like an occasion to go for tea. So you get little finger sandwiches and little petit four pastries and scones and cakes and obviously a lot of tea. That was fun. Fish and chips. My husband is a big fish and chips fan. So probably like every couple days he was trying a new place for fish and chips, and always a wild amount of fries. The chips coming back home, we would have them for like the next 3 days. There were still fries in our fridge. But that was fun for him to try all of those. Yeah, I think those are kind of some of my favorite food finds in the UK.
Yeah, I feel like as far as food goes, England, a lot of Europe, but England itself isn't really known for its like cuisine necessarily. But kind of like you were saying, is London especially is like such a melting pot. I guess you would compare it to, it's kind of like the New York City of Europe in a lot of ways. And so you have all these different food options like you would here, and it's so you have Indian food and Thai food, and you're not like it's not like they just have traditional English food. So,
Yeah.
like I'm not big on fish and chips, so I would be seeking out those those other cultures and those other foods to try. You know what I mean?
Same. Yeah, I'm the same. That's not my go-to either. I'll try a piece of the fish, but it's not my favorite. So yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of probably being in London and even Brighton, just because it's quite a big city. Having all of that diversity and all those different options, especially if you do go to one of those food halls, because then my husband can go off and get his burger or his fish and chips, and I can get, like a Lebanese like shawarma or, wrap or
Right.
bowl or something like that. And that's more fun for me to kind of try those different cuisines.
Yeah.
Yeah, you walking through that had me I was, like, in dreamland, there was, like, a feast up here, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm starting to get hungry. It's time
Yeah.
Yeah.
time for us to plan a trip to England." That is so cool. Alright. And so I think you talked a little bit, about getting to know, your local neighborhoods and going to parks and stuff, and you mentioned when you were, especially going to the swim classes that you were connecting with families. Did you have, um, you know, connections or friends while you were there that you kind of met with on a day-to-day basis or maybe once a week or, even people that you still keep in contact with?
Yeah, so before we got to England, we had some friends who lived on the East Coast. So when we first came over from France, we landed in their city, so we got to hang out with them. And then they did come down to visit us in Brighton when we were there for a couple months. But besides that, the people like we kind of met day to day. It was more just, the swim class. We did get to see them weekly because we were there kind of every Friday. But we didn't really like make plans to kind of hang out with people more ongoing than that. Like it was kind of, hey, if we're at the library at the same time and our kids are hanging out together, like great, we'll kind of chat, we'll read books, we'll play, and maybe I'll see you back here next week. But we didn't really make firm plans. And I think part of that was just because yes, we were there for 2 months, or 4 months in total, but 2 months in each city. So we would have had time like to invest in relationships and to meet up with people more regularly and keep in touch with them and maybe come back and see them in a couple years. But I think because we knew there was an end date, I think there was probably like a hesitancy on our part to like pursue relationships like that. And I don't know, I kind of go back and forth. I to go on a total side quest here, but I always it kind of rubs me the wrong way when people travel and they'll say like, oh, these local people were just sitting outside their house and they smiled at me and oh, I came in and I had dinner and I was there all night, and it's like, okay, but did they really want you there all night? Like kind of, um, yeah, like I don't have my thoughts on it fully fully put together, but I think there's something about making friends with local people that can feel a little bit transactional, I think, when you're kind of just floating through the town and floating back out and you don't really have the ability to invest. Like I think of people coming to Vancouver, like who came to my city, I'd be happy to hang out with you, hey, if we're at the same place. But, I'm probably like, I don't go out of my way to hang out with, tourists in my city every day. And I think most of us would say the same thing. I'm going to work and job and taking care of my kid and the daily life. So yeah, I think I always feel like we're kind of imposing on people. I don't know if maybe that's wrong. But that was sort of the feeling I had. And because we had all the sightseeing and stuff we wanted to do. So I think if we were there permanently, like if we were moving to London, we would have been a lot more intentional about like, okay, we're gonna like, get the phone numbers of these people we're seeing and, set up times to see them more regularly. But I think because it was temporary, it was a lot more just like, serendipitous. Whoever we see at the library is who we're going to hang out with today. And then if we see him next week, great. If not, we'll hang out with whoever we see then, kind of thing. So sorry, long answer, but
No, no. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, because you're not quite sure if, you're gonna I like that. The kind of like we talk a lot about having going to a place, having an itinerary and you have like things that you want to do. But some of the stuff you just kind of like, let chance take it and see what
Mhm.
happens type thing. So
Yeah.
so I think that's a good way to approach it too. And that works. It's interesting that you said you mentioned about feeling like you're imposing, like overstaying your welcome type thing. Yeah, because there are some and we've talked about it on our podcast too. Some people talk about like homestays, which
Mm,
might be a little bit different because that person is literally opening their home to have someone come stay, and
mhm.
you pay a fee for that too.
Yeah.
So that might be a little bit different, but Yeah, definitely don't wanna be overstaying your welcome.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know, like, I almost feel bad, like, "Hey, invest in this friendship. I'm gonna be gone in 2 weeks, but, like, take time out of your life, like, come and, meet us somewhere," or that sort of thing, like, I would yeah, I don't know. It makes me a little uncomfy, but I'm sure there are people who are saying, like, "Oh, that we would have loved that, like, that would have been exactly what we wanted." So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a difference of culture, really, because I
Mm,
feel the same way as far as, like, you know, here, like you said, I mean, I don't go out of my way to, like, make friends with tourists or anything, but I think in certain cultures, they view it differently in a lot of ways, and, yeah, I don't know, I get what you're saying and not wanting to get too close to somebody that you may never see again, but there can also kind of be a beauty in that too, to have, like, these deep human connections you make abroad, knowing that you're probably never gonna see these people again, but, like, you still have that moment those moments
yeah.
together, you know?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there can be something special in that also,
Yeah, I agree.
you know?
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, at that point, there's no ulterior motives or anything. It's like, you and this person live on opposite ends of the world, but,
Right.
you share this one common experience or moment in time,
Yeah.
and then they kinda drift away as people do, and,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something beautiful in that too, I think, in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got quite a few memories of just, traveling and, like, meeting someone and, like, really enjoying, the company and the conversation and whatnot, even if it's just, like, at a pool or something like that.
Mhm.
Just
Right,
some random person. I may or may not even know your name, but, like, it was a positive
and you
experience.
remember them and we talk about them, like the guy on the plane we met on the way, back from Peru, like, I don't even remember what his name was, but, like, we remember that conversation, and it was like, he'll always have kind of a place in our psyche,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
agreed.
that's really, in essence, that's what travel's about. It's about human
Mhm.
connection, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I see both sides of it, but I think that having those kind of moments and memories and meeting people is, um, that's kinda what it's all about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think definitely the having those moments and not forcing it to be like, okay, we now have to be lifelong friends and keep in touch every week and, commit to seeing each
Right,
other. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think again having our daughter, I think really allowed us to do that. It just opens people up
right.
so much more. So having those little special moments and remembering, people who would talk to her or come over and say hi to us was definitely very impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really I'm really glad that you came on to talk about England specifically because I think and we've talked about this before, but our podcast, it's a world travel podcast. We've had people on and we've done a few episodes on Europe, but I think Europe's very um, underrepresented on this podcast. We do a lot of podcasts about South America, we've done Asia, obviously the US, but Europe is kind of underrated in a lot of ways. And I think when you think of Europe, despite it being it's a continent with a lot of different countries. I think a lot of people, when they think of Europe, they think of England, right?
Mhm.
And like I said, London's kind of like the New York City, so it's like the center of that world. And so it's kind of crazy that we've never done an episode on England or anything yet. So it's really cool that you came on to talk about that because I think it was needed for our podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks.
People needed to hear about it.
Yeah,
And your
Thanks.
unique perspective too with the slow travel and, bringing your family, and experiencing travel with an infant, That's not typically something that, we talk about, but very
Fair.
cool, awesome experience that, we are so excited to feature.
Thanks.
yeah. That's the other thing is we have a lot of we talk to all different types of travelers, and we don't
Mhm.
ever want to like put ourselves into like a niche or anything. And so we've had people on that are backpackers who stay in hostels. We have adventure travelers. We have people on that travel with their families and with kids, and so we like to really keep it like a large variety, and we like to talk to a lot of different types of people that travel differently. Because
Yeah.
it's such a different thing for everybody.
Totally. Yeah. And it can like inspire people, oh, I had never thought to do that kind of travel. Or even just like, oh, that's the next, phase of life. Like I know for myself, like I've done the hostels, the solo backpack thing, I've done the couples travel, I've done the multi-generational, and I've done like the slow travel with the baby and the dog. And it's interesting, like, yeah, all the different travel styles, I guess, that you kind of will go through in a lifetime, or even just if you're inspired, you hear a story on a podcast of somebody who did something you hadn't thought of before, but it kind of piques your interest. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of wrapping us up a little bit here. Do you want to walk us through, or just tell us a little bit about your blog, Teaspoon
Sure.
of Adventure?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Teaspoon of Adventure, I actually started it way back in 2012 from that first trip to London, mostly just because my parents were, panicked that their 19-year-old was on the other side of the world all by herself, and I didn't want to send multiple emails. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna, put it on a website, and you guys can look there, and if I'm posting, I'm alive. So that's kind of how it started, and then it really just over the years kind of snowballed out of like my personal diary into hopefully being a helpful resource for travelers. So usually speaking to people kind of mid-budget who the whole idea with the teaspoon of adventure, you just want a bit of adventure. You're probably not going to hike, Everest or anything like that, but just ways to infuse a little bit of adventure. So yeah, I've got lots of itineraries and things to do and packing lists and all that sort of stuff. Teaspoonofadventure.com.
Very nice.
Very cool.
And where are you guys planning next? Or you guys have anything in the books ready to go? Or
Yeah, actually, funny timing. Today we're taking a seaplane just over to Vancouver Island, so it's only going to be a half-hour flight. But that's our little trip. We'll be there for the next kind of week. So yeah, in a couple hours we'll be getting on a plane.
oh, nice.
Oh, perfect timing. We just
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
That is very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We won't hold you any longer, so you can kind of wrap things up because I'm sure you got some last minute things to do before you get
Yeah.
on that plane.
And yeah, getting off this podcast and jumping right on a plane, that is what we are all about.
Yeah,
That's
thank you so
awesome.
much for having me. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we hope to have you come back soon.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Our conversation with Rihanna, she was so fun to talk to, so well spoken, really kind of immersed us in the culture and what it was like to live there and slow travel in England. And we're very excited to schedule some time with her and chat about France next time.
That's right.
Yeah, so let us know if you guys enjoyed this episode. This is a different style, travel than we typically cover.
Feature, yeah.
But still very cool. There's a lot of, I think, content out there of like traveling with kids and families, and specifically more niche, like traveling with infants. So definitely an audience that, we'd love to welcome here. But with that, we can share our socials. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and Instagram at Temporary Locals Podcast. Jared over there is on Instagram at Rover_Stover and YouTube at Rover Stover. And you can find me, Megan, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Mega Goes Global. And with that,
I'm Jared.
and I'm Megan. Thanks for exploring with us.
Remember to be a local anywhere you go.
Bye.
Bye.